If you ever confused beach and bitch, or you were not sure if something is a threat or a threat, then you probably know that pronunciation is important. Hi there, I'm Dr. Michael Rutkowski, and I'm a polyglot and a linguist, and I mispronounce words for a living. So the lesson here is obvious, and pronunciation is important. I don't think I need to convince you of that, although working with some people who come to me for help, I realized actually it's not so obvious for many people. For example, there are so many intermediate speakers of English or any language for that matter who seem to struggle, who don't feel confident with the way they speak, but at the same time they are oblivious to pronunciation, they don't work on it, and they don't feel like they even need to pronounce stuff clearly. And in a sense, it's right, because we have, for example, in English, we have so many different varieties of pronunciation. You can have Australian English, American English, British English. So you might come to a conclusion that you can pronounce stuff the way you want, and it's not gonna matter, right? Well, no, because people, if your pronunciation is not gonna be consistent, people will struggle in understanding you, and you will make a worse impression on them, and so on and so forth. So the key benefit of speaking clearly, speaking with a proper pronunciation, is making a great impression on people, because you can't realize how easily you can mimic them and make an impression that you know the language very well, just because you pronounce stuff clearly or in a native-like manner. Maybe the word clearly is not perfect here, because sometimes what you're aiming for is actually less clear pronunciation in order to sound more native-like, which would be a better term here. And this benefit is tied to the next one, which is increased confidence in speaking. So if you want to impress people, maybe you use the language for professional purposes, you really want to make an impression, but also feel confident, feel like what you say matters, what you say has an influence on people, and hacking, to use this word here, pronunciation is one of the best ways of getting there. And last but not least, you learn faster and better, because pronunciation gives your brain more information on how to differentiate words, for example, how to understand people, and it helps you categorize words on the basis of, for example, being minimal pairs, right? In the hook of this video, I use the word bitch and beach as an example, and this is an example of a minimal pair. So the word that is only different on the basis of one sound, which in this case is E and right? Beach, bitch. So how to do it? How to learn pronunciation, how to do it effectively in the confines of your own home, for example. Confines of your own home? Can't say that. So first of all, you gotta learn about the pronunciation, the phonetics, if you will, of your target language. So you probably speak a language already, right? You have a native tongue, and perhaps maybe even more languages than that. So learn what are the differences. Compare your target language with the languages you speak, and see which sounds you'll have to pay more attention to. For example, I'm a native speaker of Polish, and we don't differentiate between the th sound, and f, the F sound, not the F word, which makes it more difficult for me to hear the difference between the words like threat and threat, and all the more difficult for me to pronounce it. So I know these are the points for me to work on, to improve on, if I want to speak in a more native-like manner. Next comes active listening. So you really want to listen to native speakers, to your course, book recordings or whatever, with the previous step in mind. So you want to know what you have to focus on and make your listening all the more focused on these spots of your language learning. The next one, everybody tells you this: practice aloud, practice speaking, even if you're just learning words, not phrases, pronounce them out loud, because just knowing or being able to differentiate the sounds, it's not gonna make you pronounce them correctly. You gotta practice it actively, and perhaps it's gonna take even more time once you analyzed or identified the difficult parts for you. It's gonna take some time to practice it, and you have to kind of learn the do's and don'ts on the way, and it's probably not gonna change overnight. The next step is also very, very crucial. You gotta get some feedback, and it can be from people, from native speakers, or like a teacher, or some friends of yours who speak the language, or even you can use AI. I've been actually experimenting with AI on this in this regard, and in my opinion, the available solutions are not really there yet. I know it because I tried to speak to it, and I purposefully committed some mistakes, and it didn't catch it. So it's probably good if you're like starting from zero, but if you want to work, for example, on the difference between F and Th sound, as I was explaining, it's not so great yet. Nevertheless, I'm sure AI will prove me wrong very soon, and the technology is gonna catch up, and you'll be able to use it probably even for free. Next thing you can do, you can choose a popular person who's a native speaker of your target language and shadow them or mimic them. So you just, I don't know, you're learning American English and you like the show Friends, so you choose Ross or Rachel and you repeat after them, after they spoke. This is gonna help you tremendously because indeed when we start speaking a new language, we kind of create a new persona, and you can choose to pronounce stuff in many different ways, and if you're gonna mimic a real person, then the persona you're creating is gonna be all the more natural and sounding more native-like. And the last step, which is probably the hardest for everyone, you gotta do it every day. Because it's not about the length of your practice or anything else for that matter, it's about the consistency. And if you can do it every day, you're gonna have tremendous results. So please make sure you do it, you build the habit of practicing, of speaking out loud, of comparing your pronunciation with native speakers, and so on. So thank you for listening to this short lesson. If you like this, you might like other videos on my channel, and I encourage you to like and subscribe, and see you soon. And if you stuck around to this moment, I'm going to share something more private. I'm right now in Brazil, and I do speak Portuguese, but I speak the European version of Portuguese. And talking to native speakers here is such a different story, because obviously, the pronunciation of Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese is completely different. And, for example, in a store, I cannot tell you how many times I had to ask the shop assistant to tell me, to repeat the word debit, which, in European Portuguese would be débito. But in here it's jabichu or something like this, which I didn't really hack yet. I arrived here 2 days ago, but it shows you again that even if you speak a different variety of the same language, if you want to use it or apply it in a certain place, it might be useful to learn the intricacies of their dialect, of their pronunciation, because they might even think you're speaking a different language to them. And it actually happened. I was talking to a lady at a gym, and she and we were talking in Portuguese, but then when she talks to someone, she said to them like, he is a foreigner, he doesn't speak our language, right? We weren't talking in English, we were talking in Portuguese all the time, but because I pronounced stuff differently, she perceived me as being an outsider and as speaking a different language. So yeah, thanks for listening, like and subscribe, and see you soon.